meeting of the Council Executive. I'm Councillor Lawrence Fitzpatrick and I chair the Executive. The meeting has been broadcast live. A recording will be available afterwards through the Council's website. I'm being assisted today by the Chief Executive, the Governance Manager and colleagues from Committee Services and IT. Some attendees may be joining the meeting from another location. Everything said while microphones are live will be broadcast and recorded. Members are asked to be polite, respectful and patient. There is more information, including a privacy statement about meeting arrangements on the Council's website. An agenda has been published showing the business for today's meeting. I will introduce each item. Usually a Council officer will speak briefly about the report. Councillors then ask questions, have a discussion and make any decisions which may be required. Councillors may leave the meeting from time to time while they have declared interests that prevent them from taking part. There will be a pause while that happens, and they will be invited back in for the next item of business. If the meeting proves to be a long one, it may be adjourned temporarily for a meal or comfort break, and I will say if that is going to happen. Do we have any apologies for absence, please?
Chair, thank you. There are no apologies today, and if I can confirm that we have Councillors Angela and Damien Doran-Timson online.
Thank you very much. Are there any declarations of interest, please? Councillor McMillan, please.
Well, thanks, Chair. Just a transparency statement that I'm employed by Kirsty Sullivan, the Member of Parliament for Bathgate and Linlithgow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other declarations of interest? Doesn't seem to be. The order of business is as per the agenda. Item 17 is marked as a private item because the clerk considers it needed to be taken in private. I am asking the meeting to agree that the item will be taken in private on the basis it contains exempt information in terms of paragraph 1 of part 1 of Schedule A of the Local Government Scotland Act 1973. Do members agree? Thank you very much. Can we confirm the draft minutes of the meeting of the Council Executive held on Tuesday 17th February 2026? Do we agree they are a correct record? Thank you very much. And we now come to item 5, which is the timetable of meetings for 26-27. Can I ask Leslie Montague to speak to the paper, please?
Thank you, Chair. This report sets out a timetable of meetings to July 2027 of the Council, its committees and working groups, including policy development and scrutiny panels, which meet according to a regular timetable. Council is required to agree a timetable of meetings for the Council, its committees and working group that meet according to its regular timetables. In accordance with a recommendation by internal audit and recent practice, a timetable of meetings for the next year is produced for consideration and approval. It has followed past practice so far as practicable in terms of general pattern and frequency of meetings of bodies in the Council's decision-making structure. To assist members, the same information found in Appendix 1 is presented in an alternative format in Appendix 2. Subject to a small number of exceptions and standing orders, meetings will continue to be convened on a hybrid basis from the Council chamber. Meeting arrangements have been proposed that meets the requirement of standing orders. Except when required for regulatory committees, the main school holiday periods have been avoided and meetings do not start before 9:30 a.m. or after 3 p.m. Meetings arranged for May 2027 have been arranged to take account of the Scottish local government elections 2027. As has been recent practice, a number of dates have also been identified for the purpose of elected member training. Identifying and setting aside these dates for training and member development will assist in the planning and delivery of that training. Setting dates and times for meetings of full Council, its committees and other bodies will ensure compliance with the Code of Corporate Governance and internal audit's recommendations and will assist in the forward planning of Council business. The committee is asked to approve the recommendations as set out in the report. Chair, I am happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? This is a norm for each year where we agree to fix our diaries 1 year in advance. Doesn't seem to be. Are there any comments? Doesn't seem to be. Are we happy to agree the recommendation? Thank you very much. We now move on to item 6, which is the scheme of elected members' remuneration allowances and reimbursement of expenses. As members may be aware, pay levels are revised in accordance with the Local Governance Scotland Act 2004, Remuneration Amendment Regulations 2026, which will come into effect on 1st April 2026. As these changes are set out in legislation, it is not for councils to accept or reject these changes. However, I will ask Vera Bowl to speak to the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of the report is to allow the adoption of a scheme of elected members' remuneration allowances and reimbursement of expenses for 26-27 in accordance with the Local Governance Scotland Act 2004, Remuneration Regulations 2007 as amended. It is recommended to approve the revised scheme of elected members' remuneration allowances and reimbursement of expenses for 26-27 as set out in Appendix 1. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Vera. Are there any questions? Doesn't seem to be. Are there any comments? Doesn't seem to be. Do we agree the recommendation? Thank you very much. We now move on to item 7, the 25-26 General Fund Revenue Budget, the Month 9 Monitoring Report. Alistair Black, please.
Chair, the Revenue Monitoring Report sets out the latest financial position for the Council's General Fund. As at the end of December, month 9, the Council is facing a significant overspend of just under £3 million. This represents an increase of £387,000 from the position reported at month 6. After taking account of the Integration Joint Board's contribution of £428,000, the overspend reduces to £2.6 million. Further detail and forecast variances and recurring pressures are set out at Appendix 1. Members will be aware that provision has been made for the majority of recurring pressures going into 26-27 in the budget that was agreed last week, in particular, including the recurring pressure of £2.9 million for the Integration Joint Board and £1 million for the Council Tax Reduction Scheme. The areas of pressure are as follows. For adults and older people, the service is forecasting an overspend of £1.9 million. This is driven mainly by an overspend in commissioned adult social care services, reflecting continued unprecedented demand for packages of care. Homelessness is forecast to overspend by £2.1 million, with demand for temporary accommodation, particularly B&B, remaining high. For children in justice, external residential placements remain under pressure, with the service forecasting an overall overspend of £253,000. These overspends are partially offset by underspends arising across a number of areas, and in particular in relation to decreasing energy costs. In terms of savings delivery, of the £11.9 million approved savings for 25-26, 87% are categorised as green, 13% as amber. Work continues to ensure that all savings, particularly those rated amber, are fully delivered by the year end. Finally, as we work towards a sustainable financial position, heads of service are required to take all necessary actions to manage expenditure within existing resources wherever possible, preserve any in-year underspends and to fully deliver the agreed savings measures. Further detailed updates will be provided in due course as part of the year-end outturn process and the ongoing budget management process. Thank you, Chair. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Alistair. Are there any questions? Councillor Janet Campbell, please.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you, Alistair. On page 1 of your report, the first note informs us that the 9-month monitoring exercise has shown an increase of £387,000 in the overspend. And point 3, we can see that material recurring pressures of £7.27 million have to be addressed. Was it therefore financially incompetent for the Tory Labour administration, supported by Reform, to identify the use of £1 million from council reserves in order to plug budget gaps of their making?
That's a political question, which is, I think, unfair to ask an officer. Are there any other questions? Councillor Orr.
Thanks, Chair. Page 4, I've got a few questions, if that's all right. Page 4, how many vacant posts are there? It's D3-1, sorry. How many vacant posts are there, and is the remuneration pack benchmarked against other councils to give us a better chance of filling them in this area, please?
Sorry, who's answering this one? Sorry. Leslie Henderson, thank you. I saw you pointing, Alistair, but I've a body in front of me and I couldn't see who it was.
Thank you, Chair. If I could just confirm, was it section D.3.1 in relation to the vacancy position in corporate services?
In legal services.
In legal services. So it is solicitor posts in legal services and senior solicitor posts that we have been unable to fill. We have, as reported to committee, before taken a number of measures to look at making the package in legal services more attractive. That includes extensive benchmarking, not just with other local authorities, but with other private sector and public sector organisations. It's a very competitive market, particularly in relation to private sector, and the salaries that are attracted there are very difficult for us to compete with. So we are at the moment looking at a model of how we balance internal resource versus external resource, and we keep that under review. I don't have the figure of the number of vacancies that are in legal services just now, but I can circulate that to committee if that would be desirable afterwards.
Of course, that's perfectly acceptable. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie, for that. The next question is in the next category, D3-2, housing, customer and building services. Do we know if there is a reason why people are tending not to self-accommodate, which is obviously causing us additional pressures for housing?
Elaine Cook, please.
Thank you, Chair. No, there's no particular reason for that. However, when they do not self-accommodate, that means we are forced to find some appropriate either bed and breakfast or temporary tenancy at the time.
Thanks, Elaine. Operational services, D3-3, we're talking about an underspend of £623,000. Do we know where that shift has come from?
David Moll, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the underspend of 623 is the overall position as compared to for the service. At the paragraphs at the start of page 5 provides some more information on how that's broken down. So an underspend in both facilities management and roads and transportation, a small underspend in nets, and that's offset by a forecast overspend in recycling and waste.
And can I ask where we are redirecting that underspend to in the coming year? How we're going to make best use of that?
Alistair.
Thanks, Chair. So in terms of 25-26, the underspend is managed within the overall position and the overall net overspend that's projected. For 26-27, we've taken account of the recurring pressures, we've taken account of the recurring overspends, and we've rebalanced the budgets. So that's managed within the overall balanced budget that was approved by Council last week.
Thanks, Alistair. You just give me a wee second. The council tax reduction scheme.
Which page are you on, sorry?
Page 7.
Thank you.
Do we expect this, by how much do we expect this to change as a result of the increase in the council tax that we agreed last week at council? And what is the threshold that you can apply for council tax reduction Rom, if you can remind me what that is, please.
Alistair, please.
Thanks, Chair. The budget set last week took into account the assumed increase in council tax reduction. So the net increase of 1 million per 1% increase in council tax is net of our assumption for how much more council tax reduction we're expecting. So we've made provision in the budget both for the income that we would receive as a consequence of the additional council tax, and we've made accommodation for our assumed additional council tax reduction scheme payments. We've also, within the budget for 26-27, reflected the total recurring cost pressure that we see in 25-26. So that means that in 26-27, we expect to be starting from a balanced position on the council tax reduction position, taking into account the assumed additional council tax reduction scheme recipients. In terms of the threshold, that is largely income based. It does take account of wider circumstances, but it is focused on income. And while there isn't a precise absolute cut-off, it's round about 16,000 per year. That is the threshold. There's information available on the council website, and relevant people are directed to that, signposted to that, to see what support may be available.
Thanks, Alistair, for explaining that so clearly. Do appreciate it. And the final question is on page 2 of Appendix 1. Housing, customer and building services void rent loss. I just wondered if, bearing in mind the varying categories of voids and that we're predominantly dealing with a number of category 3s which take longer to do and undertake more expense, is the void projection for 26-27 realistic in terms of reducing the void numbers as noted?
Elaine Cook, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I do believe that they are realistic. A lot of work is going in with our voids team to work on all categories, whether it's 1, 2 or 3. So we feel this is a realistic number in the coming year. There has been more resource going into the voids to ensure that we maximise the amount of completed properties so that they're able to go back out for tenancy or permanency.
Thanks, Elaine. That's me, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Sally Patrick, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks for the report. I've got a few questions as well, so I hope that's okay. I'm going to try and run through them in order. I just had my first question is about it's quite general. It's about IJB funding. Where do they get their funding from so that they are able to give us £428,000 this year?
Alistair.
Thanks, Chair. So funding for the Integration Joint Board is from the Council and from NHS. There are different funding routes when Scottish Government makes funding allocations. So sometimes funding that is directed towards social care or directed towards delayed discharges or directed towards whichever part of the IJB services may come through a funding route that you might not otherwise expect. So it could come through the NHS route, and when it's more directed towards social care, for example. But by and large, the social care funding is delegated from the council, and the health funding is delegated from the health board. In previous years, there may have been allocations that are given to the IJB, similarly to the council, if that money's not spent in year, or if it aligns to spend for future years, it can be carried forward in the IJB's reserves. So the IJB is able to carry reserves and is able to deploy those reserves in line with need in future years. That's the reason for the IJB's reserves being able to be utilised to contribute towards the overall social care overspend. I would note, and it was picked up at Council last week, that the IJB expects to have fully used its reserves by the end of 25-26. So there wouldn't be a further contribution that the IJB can make from its reserves. So that's an important point when we're thinking about the risks of the IJB and the risks of social care spend, that the IJB's reserves are expected to be fully used. As councillors will recall, the council made provision for the recurring costs for the IJB in the 26-27 budget, so that will support the IJB and mitigate against higher risk savings that otherwise would need to be taken forward.
Thank you. Thank you for preempting my next question. So there's no more that the IJB can provide to the council to pay for social care.
Chair, that is the full extent of the IJB's reserves that can be contributed for the social care overspend.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then moving on to D.3.2, and again, it is about the homelessness, because obviously that is one of two very significant overspends that are projected. And I just wondered if it's possible. So we've got 245 clients a night in B&B accommodation. And I note that that's an increase of 15 since September 2025. However, the number of homeless applications received is reducing. Is the forecast that the number of homeless applications will continue to reduce? And is it possible to say why?
Lane Cook, please.
Thank you, Chair. Given that the number has not reduced over the last year, it has increased up to 245, it would be very difficult to see how they could reduce significantly to make an impact. However, I think, as the previous question pointed out, that we have a number of clients who will not self-accommodate anymore, and that's what's given the pressure on the bed and breakfast per night. Maybe, sorry, Councillor, could you remind me of the second part of that question?
So it was just really because there's a sentence in that second paragraph. The number of homeless applications received has reduced, but the proportion of those who are not self-accommodating has increased. So do you think that the numbers that are presenting as homeless, is that going to continue to decrease? Is that number going to continue to fall? And is there any indication as to why? So what is working essentially?
The team and the housing options team work very hard with the clients who come and present as homeless to find out if there are any other options for them. So I think it still is quite difficult to predict that it could reduce. We are certainly looking for every avenue that we can to help our clients, whether it's through advice on housing strategy or whatever, and we'll continue to do that and report back as necessary.
Okay, thank you. All right, my next question is in D.3.3. It's on page 5 and it's about roads and transportation, the underspend of 615,000, largely due to a one-off saving in street lighting energy of £483,000. What does that mean?
David Moll, please.
Thank you, Chair. That saving is as a result of the price we're paying, the unit price we're paying for street lighting electricity this year, being lower than was anticipated when we set the 25-26 revenue budget around about this time last year. And just to expand in the budget, the revenue budget setting for 26-27 last week, that saving essentially has been taken to help balance next year's budget.
It's just that in the next paper on the General Services Capital Budget, there's a thing about slippage in road lighting. I'm just trying to marry up.
Okay, so
I don't know whether I didn't know whether to just ask in the next paper, but it seems silly when it's the same thing. I don't know what to do, Chair. Help.
David will help you.
I'll try my best, Chair. So the revenue paper is looking at the running costs of having street lighting. So that's the electricity costs. When we get onto the capital paper, the capital spend on street lighting is to do with the replacement of the street lighting columns and lanterns.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to ask another question in the next paper anyway. I just will. I'm just going to be daft today. That's fine. Okay. The next question then is in D.3.4 and it's about the social policy. The overspend is 1.945 million. I know the amount of work that is being put into this to try and provide a sustainable long-term solution. And I just wondered if what was agreed last week in the budget, are you confident that that's what we need going forward to help provide a platform for a long-term sustainable solution?
Comment person, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I am. Clearly, there are great unpredictabilities and issues around predicting demand, but we have done an extensive exercise at looking at the scale of increase in demand over the past 3 years, and I am confident that the additional budget awarded to manage recurring pressures is based on sound evaluation of that risk.
Okay, that's lovely, Jo. Thank you very much. And then my last couple of questions are in D.3.7, which is on page 6, and they're both about education. So the first question, the overspend of £430,000 in relation to ELC from policy requirements and funding follows the child. Is someone able to expand exactly what that means?
Greg Welsh, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the overspend position is due to the ever-increasing number of parents and carers selecting a private provider nursery placements, which comes at a cost of £8,664 per child for the 1140 hours. The Council has a statutory responsibility, though, to ensure that we have capacity across our own settings to accommodate all of our residents in West Lothian as well. So balancing both of those on an annual basis is a challenge in terms of the unpredictable nature of what parental choice will be. However, that overspend position has been improved year on year. However, it does still remain a significant pressure on the education budget.
So I guess my follow-up question to that, sorry, that's going to be another 2 questions then, sorry, is do you think that funding follows the child? Would you consider it as being fully funded by the Scottish Government?
The funding that the Council receives for all of education comes through the block grant. It's then for each individual council to determine how that budget is utilised. In terms of the principles of funding follows the child, there are a number of statutory responsibilities placed on local authorities, both in terms of ensuring there is enough capacity and provision within the local authority boundary for all of the local authority residents. Therefore, that does provide a budgetary pressure in ensuring that we remain within staffing limits. It does provide accessible, flexible childcare for all. And the second part is the statutory responsibility for ensuring the quality, which also comes at a cost, obviously, for the council as well. So taking all of those into account, there are challenges in terms of the principles. The statutory guidance does state that cross-boundary placements, for example, is where possible, and given the financial challenges that the Director of Finance has already outlined and the pressures on the education budget at the moment, led to obviously the Council reviewing what that principle in practice actually looks like.
Okay, all right. And then my last question is about the overspend of £100,000 forecast within education related to the costs involved with the cyber incident. I thought the Scottish Government was going to assist with that. Is that not right? Did I pick that up entirely wrongly?
Chair, there's been no funding provided from Scottish Government to assist with the Council's response to the cyber incident.
It was a request made, though?
There was a request made to Scottish Government for financial support.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair, for letting me ask all the questions.
Thank you. Any other questions? Doesn't seem to be any comments. Doesn't seem to be happy to accept the recommendation. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 8, which is the 25-26 General Services Capital Budget, Month 9 Monitoring Report. Alistair Black, please.
Chair, following completion of the month 9 monitoring review, the projected outturn for 25-26 is 61.8 million against the approved full year budget of 79.3 million. Slippage is therefore 13.5 million above planned over programming, and this reflects phasing and rephasing and timing movements between financial years rather than reductions in overall project requirements or increases in projected costs. Committed expenditure at month 9 totals 40.3 million, demonstrating the ongoing progress across the capital programme. In terms of property assets, the projected outturn is 46.1 million. The majority of this relates to the Learning Estate and Free School Meals expansion projects. Key points to note include the completion of Craigshill Primary School remains on schedule for delivery in August 27. Free School Meals expansion projects at Windenow, St John Ogilvie and Bells Quarry Primaries remain on track for delivery on time, albeit with changes to expenditure profiling between financial years. And the Young Persons Supported Housing project continues to show accelerated spend of 2.2 million, scheduled to complete in July 26. Roads and related assets, movement of phasing and expenditure relates primarily to flood prevention and drainage projects and also road lighting projects. And in open space, projected outturn is 4.2 million. Changes since month 6 are primarily linked to timing of expenditure again across a range of projects. For ICT, projected expenditure is 5.2 million, representing net acceleration of 730,000. In conclusion, Chair, the key risks are summarised in the report, along with a note of funding for the overall programme. I'm happy to answer questions, and asset lead officers are in attendance also for their own respective areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alistair. Any questions? Councillor Sally Battle, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you again for the report. So I suppose I've only got a few. I promise. There's very few questions for this one, but I suppose my first one, the slippage of 17.532 million seems like a huge amount. Is this something that we should be very concerned about, or are you confident that over the next, say, 2 financial years, we'll be able to bring this back in line with the original forecasts?
Alistair?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I am confident about this. Officers undertook a detailed review both for the month 9 monitoring position and for the capital programme considered by Council last week, and the updated capital programme through to 2032-33 sets out our estimated phasing, and I can give assurance about the confidence in setting out those forecasts in terms of our expected completion dates and delivery of the related capital investment programme.
Okay, so my next couple of questions are in D3 and it's on page 3 and it's about the property projects, although I think it's education. So in the second paragraph down in property projects, at month 6, slippage of 9.269 million was reported in the new Craigshill Primary project. So is this one not developer funded? Is this something that the council is doing?
Greg Welsh, please.
Thank you, Chair. The Craigshill Primary School is part of the Learning Estate Investment Programme in partnership with the Scottish Government. So there is council capital funding provided for the project. The last reported position was about 54% of that was council funding and approximately 46% of Scottish Government funding.
Okay. But it's still on track to be delivered when it was initially estimated for delivery?
Yes, Chair, there's been no change to the completion of the construction and the school operating for August 2027.
Okay. And then the next paragraph down is about free school meals. Is it possible to say how much of the free school meals is funded by Scottish Government?
Greg?
Chair, the projects that are noted on there around the free school meals are all coming from Scottish Government funding to support the delivery of free school meals for Primary 1 to Primary 7 as part of the manifesto commitment.
So did they give you a timetable for when the rollout had to be completed?
Chair, the local authority submitted any capital projects that would be required to deliver free school meal intentions. These were the 3 capital projects that were outlined. There has been national discussions around the challenges in terms of construction and completion. However, as outlined in the report, and will be regularly reported throughout this process, they will be completed within the required timescale, and we do have to report regularly to Scottish Government on the progress of those projects.
And these are the last ones that are outstanding in West Lothian, is that right?
Chair, these were the only 3 capital projects that were required to deliver that.
Okay, all right, thank you. Just, I suppose, my last question for education, which is, again, it's slightly more general. I'm a bit confused about developer contributions and what they can and cannot be used for within an educational setting.
Greg?
Chair, without the specifics, in general terms, when we enter into an agreement with developers, there is a financial commitment to any infrastructure education solutions or beyond that. As detailed in the appendices, the Council does collect developer contributions that are required where we see a requirement for either primary or secondary capacity demand. And then it is for Council officers to determine how those would be best utilised to meet the capacity demands as and when they occur, depending on which area. Obviously, the pressures are appearing.
I think it's just because I found some papers from a couple of years ago that said that Linlithgow Academy was going to get some developer contribution funding for its roof. And then I asked last week in the budget setting meeting, and I was told that they couldn't do that because that wasn't allowed because it was a developer contribution. I'm just a bit confused, Greg.
Chair, I recall the question being asked, what's in the capital programme for the roof as a maintenance programme? There were developer contributions collected for Linlithgow Academy, which has enhanced the learning and teaching spaces and facilities. So during the summer holiday period of last year, the old library section of Linlithgow Academy was converted into different teaching spaces, which has been used for the maths department, and upgrades to toilet facilities and so on. So that was what the developer contributions went towards, was around increasing teaching capacity and increasing the facilities within the school.
All right, thank you very much for clearing it up, although obviously I'm devastated by the destruction of a library in any capacity. Okay, I've just got 2 more questions, and they're both over on page 4 of this report. And the first one is on flood prevention and drainage. Again, there has been an increase in the slippage of £356,000 in the past 3 months. Is it possible just to expand on why that slippage has happened, and again, just to give us some confidence that it will be okay for the people that are facing?
David Moll, please.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. The additional slippage in month 9 reflects just a slight delay in the appointment of consultants that will undertake site investigation works. So that's just going to drift slightly into the new financial year, and that's what reflects the slippage. Probably worth noting that most flood prevention schemes span a number of years. There is a formal publication process under the Flood Risk Management Scotland Act for flood schemes, and it wouldn't be unusual to just have slight slippage, but still commitment to complete projects.
Okay. And then my last question had been about the road lighting with the slippage of £240,000, but I think you did answer that in the previous paper, the difference between the capital and the revenue. So thanks very much, David.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Janet Campbell, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I had also wanted to ask a question from page 4, second paragraph, the flood prevention and drainage, particularly with relation to the statement that slippage has also been identified at month 9 at the Broxburn flood prevention scheme project and also the flood risk management budget. And I wanted to ask, is this something we should be concerned about, or will these works, whilst they may have slipped, be completed?
David?
Chair, I would make the point that all flood prevention schemes, the initial findings will be when we do the site investigation works. That very much will influence the next steps going forward. So there is still an intention to carry out all approved flood prevention programmes or projects. But until we've completed site investigation works, we won't know the exact scope of what's involved in those projects.
Okay, so thanks, David. So whilst the timescale has slipped, we are confident the projects will be completed.
They are subject to findings from our site investigation works.
So what does that mean then, David? Sorry, but does that mean that the works could be abandoned or that they could slip further?
Chair, it could mean a multitude of things. It could mean that the scope of the work required is far in excess of what we initially planned. It might just mean a delay to the scope of the works. As I say, most flood prevention works span 2 or 3 years because of the process involved. There is a commitment to complete works, but I'm just exercising caution that until we undertake site investigation, we don't know definitively timescales involved or the quantum of the cost of the project.
Okay, thank you. So, and sorry to ask to continue, but would site investigation not take place or before a project actually begins, or does it have to happen throughout the project as well as prior to beginning?
The initial site investigation works are a key stage in the design and implementation of the project.
Okay, so it happens periodically throughout the project. Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Councillor Pauline Stafford, please.
Thanks, Chair. I've just got one question on page 6 under roads and other related assets. It says there are 18 projects identified at potential risk at month 9. And further to that, there's also staff resource issues. I appreciate this is a capital budget, but will this have any impact on the additional funding that was committed to roads in the budget last week, the extra £1 million each year? Will there be any impact on our ability to spend that?
David, again, please.
Chair, no, I don't think it'll impact on the additional revenue funding £1 million a year that was agreed for pothole repairs last year. That will be utilised using internal staffing resources, so it won't be impacted upon by contractor works.
Okay, so just for a wee bit more information, then the staff resource issues outlined here, could you give us any more information on what that means?
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the capital programme, we've had a number of vacant posts in our design engineering and our road safety engineering teams this year, and that has contributed to some of the slippage we're facing.
Thank you, David.
Anyone else? Doesn't seem to be any comments. Doesn't seem to be. Happy to note the recommendation. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 9. Proposed disposal of the former Armadale swimming pool, North Street, Armadale. And David Baird will speak to that, please.
Good morning, Chair. The purpose of this report is to update the Council Executive on the status of the former Armadale swimming pool and to seek approval for officers to proceed with a statutory community consultation on the proposed sale or lease of the building, which is noted in the Council's Common Good Register. As members will note from Section D of the report, the property was declared surplus to operational requirements by West Lothian Leisure and was subsequently approval was granted for officers to proceed with mandatory work relating to the disposal of a common good asset. Alongside this process, officers were approached by representatives of Armadale Thistle Football Club who wanted to explore options for taking over the building and repurposing the facility to support the football club's activities. which, as members will remember, is located immediately adjacent to the football ground at Volunteer Park. Officers were keen to explore this potential solution fully to determine if a viable solution could be delivered. As part of this exercise, extensive discussions took place over an extended period with officers from across council services and also supported by voluntary sector Gateway West Lothian and obviously the football club. Unfortunately, in spite of best efforts from all parties, the football club has determined that it cannot proceed with a viable project. As a consequence, officers are now seeking consent from Council Executive to begin the community consultation which is required by statute when the Council wishes to consider the lease or sale of a common good asset. This consultation will seek community views on the future use of the former pool, and only once officers have captured these views will a further report be submitted to Council Executive intended for June 2026. This would provide a recommendation as to whether to seek the sale or lease of the building in line with Council's surplus property procedures. The marketing period, if approved, would seek to draw out offers from the community and also from commercial uses for future uses for the building and its site. This will allow any community proposals to be considered in line with the surplus property procedures and will obviously allow groups time to avail themselves of the provisions of the community asset transfer legislation or to develop their proposals should they wish to either lease or purchase a building. In summary, Chair, the Council Executive has asked to approve the recommendations noted in Section B of the report, and I'm obviously happy to take any questions members may have.
Thank you so much, David. Are there any questions? Councillor Patel, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, David, for the report. I am absolutely flabbergasted to learn that this pool has remained filled and chemically treated and minimally heated for about 2 years now. I don't remember that ever being part of the discussions when we were agreeing to close the pool. How much money has been spent since the pool was closed to keep it filled, treated and heated?
Firstly, Chair, I can confirm that the pool has not been heated. The decision was taken not to heat the pool, but the Council Executive consent when the pool was shut was to keep it in fit for an operational purpose should that be required. In order to do that, we're required to run the pumps and keep the water in the pool, and obviously in order for health and safety purposes to do minimal dosing of the pool to make sure the water is safe. But we have certainly not heated the pool. And as I say, that is mainly to do with the fact that if we had removed the water and such likes, then we wouldn't be able to fulfil the consent from Council Executive to keep it available for operational use should that have to come back to fore. In relation to that, that's mainly because as soon as you remove water from these tiled pools, the tile spring, the pool, the pump seize up and it becomes very difficult to reinstate. And that was a clear indication from the consent that we had to do that. I don't have exact figures to hand, but I can certainly provide those, Chair, should you wish to do so.
I'd like the exact figures to be circulated to every member of this committee, if that's possible.
Yeah, no problem.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. And then can I ask what security measures were put in place? If you've got an empty, unmanned swimming pool that is full of water, how did you guarantee the safety? Because we all know that would obviously prove a severe health and safety risk in case anybody broke in.
The building remains alarmed and secured as it was previously with all the necessary doors and shutters and such likes in place. Regular inspections take place to the building and obviously with the alarm being in place we are able to monitor it. So from that point of view the building was as secure as it was when it was operating because of the necessary alarm being in place. So I believe the building was secure and we obviously do our regular inspection checks that we do for any property when it's empty.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question is about the Common Good Fund. So you now want to dispose of this building and that is going to be common good funding. So say, for example, you got an offer of £500,000. That £500,000 would be for the Common Good Fund for the people of Armadale. Is that correct? They would get all £500,000. There would be nothing that the council would take.
It would be go into the Common Good Fund and be net of any expenditure. I'm not the best person to particularly talk about how the Common Good Fund operates, but my understanding of that is that capital or receipts or revenue receipts are put into the Common Good Fund and the council can then look at what the net proceeds of that are. But yes, it would be for Armadale and then there's a process and chain to dispose of any surplus proceeds within the Common Good Fund. So there's a governance route around about that, and it's not for general fund expenditure.
Okay. All right. Thanks very much.
Any other questions? Councillor Stafford, please.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, David, for this. It says that extensive talks took place with Armadale Thistle. Were there other groups that the council has spoken to? Were there any public meetings or any other groups you've spoken to?
There hasn't been any public meetings, but certainly the building, as part of the process when the building was shutting down after West Lothian Leisure withdrew from the property, there was an extensive consultation at that stage in terms of the pool itself. So there was a lot of discussion then, and there was nothing really came from that. The Armadale Thistle Football Club came forward, and we did want to try and pursue that. Obviously, that had to come back to Council Executive if a proposal came forward. Certainly at that stage there was no other groups. In terms of public meetings and such like, that's the purpose of today's paper, is to coalesce the positions so we can then do a proper consultation, and that will include whatever was necessary to do that.
Okay, thanks. So if this 8-week consultation went ahead, how would the views of the community be reflected back, and should that decision or any decision on putting it to market, should that not come to full council rather than council executive?
In terms of how we would capture the details of the consultation, we have a robust process for doing that. We've done that in other common good properties. So we would capture all these details. We'd make sure that it was out through the fullest possible channels to ensure the community was aware of that via the council and others. And we would also be delighted to speak to anyone that came forward with proposals. If there was public meetings required, then obviously that would be something we'd be quite happy to bring forward as well. In terms of the second question, sorry, was that again?
Should it not come back to full council rather than council executive?
Perhaps defer to
Governance Manager, please.
Thank you, Chair. In accordance with the Council's decision-making structure, it is a decision competently taken by Council Executive. It's not reserved to full Council.
Okay, thanks, Leslie. And I don't know if you'll know, David, is this common goods land, is this inalienable common goods? Like, would we need to go to the Sheriff Court for disposal?
We would have to go to court, yeah.
Okay, that's great. And can you tell us, do you know how much is in the common good for this area? And do you have any more details on the governance of that, how that common good fund's administered or decisions are made around its use?
I'm not aware of the balances for that. They are reported as part of the council's accounts every year and such likes. So if there were balances to be distributed, I assume then that would then go back down. I might be wrong here, but I think it goes via LAC and there's means of distributing it through that, but I'm sure colleagues will correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Janet Campbell, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks very much, David. I wanted to pick up on one of the first question that Councillor Stafford had asked, and whilst we can see here that discussions have taken place with Armadale Thistle, who, as we know, are situated next to the swimming pool, were, for instance, regeneration officers involved to pull together all interested parties? I'm aware that there are a number of organisations which would be interested in working together with Armadale Thistle, but would potentially need a facilitator to pull that together. So was any effort made to do that?
I can confirm that officers from across the council were involved in the meetings with Armadale Thistle, really just to try and give them a bit of support and a bit of help to build their bids and such likes. But that didn't come to any fruition now. What we would hope, though, is if there's other parties are able to come to the fore and support Armadale Thistle or other proposals, then that could be captured as part of the statutory consultation. And we'd obviously be delighted to support anything that came forward for the future use of the building, whether that be from the Thistle Football Club themselves or from other groups.
Okay, thanks, David. Thank you.
Any other questions? Doesn't seem to be any comments. Councillor Stafford, please.
Thanks, Chair. We've got a motion with committee services.
Well,
amendment. Sorry.
I will move the recommendation in the paper. Do you have a seconder, please?
Happy to second. Yeah.
Okay. And in speaking to the recommendation, I think the work been done by the officers is first class. They've put a lot of time into it. We've had very, very clear advice. Thank you. Can we see your amendment, please? Sorry, you have a seconder, of course. Oh, sorry, Susan, you're entitled to speech. I beg your pardon. I've been corrected.
Thank you. Yes, it's just it was in comment on the proposal. As Councillor Fitzpatrick has highlighted, I would like to thank all of the staff across the council who've been working, and not with Armadale Thistle, but also working with other colleagues across the community council and across the council itself. No stone has been left unturned in trying to ensure that we could try and find a solution in supporting Armadale Thistle in particular. But circumstances as such have meant that it's not been able to progress at this stage. There's a lot of work being done within Armadale Thistle as well. So, but I would like to thank all of those staff who've been involved across the system and the members of the Community Council who have been intensely involved in the discussions and the progress through this period. So thank you.
First of all, could I bring in the governance manager, please, to advise on this amendment?
Thank you, Chair. I can confirm that the amendment has been checked by the clerk and has been verified as competent and lawful.
Thank you. And can I bring in Alistair, please, as regards the financial situation?
Thanks, Chair. I've reviewed the amendment and have no further comments.
Sorry, could you speak up? Sorry.
Thanks, Chair. I've reviewed the amendment and have no further comments on the financial implications.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'll just start by saying I do acknowledge the work that officers have done in working through the proposal with Armadale Thistle. But this is a common good building. It belongs fundamentally to the people of Armadale, and across the town I think there is a clear desire to see this brought back into use in a way that delivers a lasting benefit to that community. It's a significant decision for Armadale. And we've seen this again and again over my time in the council, that the communities with the least capacity are really the communities that need these facilities the most. And I think we should be going further than we have to make sure that they have at least some facilities in their communities. We've seen decisions on common good and other community facilities rushed through, and in the case of Bubbles, demolished even without elected members being involved in that decision. And I don't want to see this happening in Armadale. The agreed Armadale locality plan for 23 to 26 commits us to reducing health inequalities, improving mental health well-being, and increasing community decision making and expanding provision for young people. And I think that this building could be really central to delivering those aims. The context and the timing of this, I think, is really important. We're just at the imminent conclusion of our community centre review, which is going to have huge changes for community centre management committees right across West Lothian. And I know that Armadale Community Centre Management Committee will now have the opportunity to re-establish itself as an independent community body, separate from the building, which is going to revert to council, being council run. And they may well have the ambition and capacity to lead projects for the wider town. But this will take time, and they'll need that time. They don't hand over the keys as such until April. So I think the timing of this is really important. I think crucially, on the 10th of February this year, the Scottish Parliament also passed its Community Wealth Building Bill, which is now just waiting for royal assent. And this legislation is going to place duties on councils to support community ownership, make better use of common good assets, and bring vacant buildings back into productive use for social, environmental and economic benefit. So for me, I think we should pause here. This is a really central and important building in Armadale, and I don't want to see another derelict site in this community. I know we've got an 8-week consultation, and that could be an opportunity for the community to put their views. But at the end of the day, they can put those views, and yes, they'll be reflected in a paper to this council executive. But even if all the opposition parties vote together, we're still outnumbered here, and it could well just go through a decision in council executive that we need to move this site on. So I think for the sake of Armadale, a community that really, really needs more facilities, not fewer, we should pause here and give them a chance to catch their breath after the changes of the community centre review, and just look at this again. I think an 8-week review coming straight back to council executive is far too quick.
Seconder.
Thanks very much, Chair. I also appreciate the discussions which have taken place already with Armadale Thistle. But I think, however, what is lacking is there are a number of organisations within the town which have shown a willingness to work together with the aim of taking forward projects which will benefit the whole area. Until recently, I had been employed by NHS Lothian providing healthcare within the Armadale, Westfield and Blackridge area. This is an area within West Lothian which we should know has pockets of real deprivation. That had been compounded by unemployment caused by the loss of West Lothian's heavy industries since the 1980s. These are the very communities which have witnessed decline in their facilities, and they are in desperate need of support to maintain the existing facilities which are in their midst, which are easily acceptable and which can be used for a variety of purposes. I witnessed the closure of Broxburn swimming pool despite a community-led effort to save that pool, witnessed that closure. That has since been demolished. There is hope within the area that the space which has been left can be put to community use. That has still to be decided. But I would hate to think that the same thing could happen in Armadale, as I say, a community and an area, if we take into account the wider area of Westfield and Blackridge, which are in absolute desperate need of facilities such as this. So I would suggest that we need longer than simply an 8-week consultation, and we also need help, or the community needs help to facilitate a bringing together of all the interested organisations and not simply a discussion with Armadale Thistle, which, as we know, is situated right next to the swimming pool, but may not be in a position to take on a project on its own. But with the support of other organisations in the town, there is a real aim and a real desire to make sure that this facility remains in Armadale. So I support this amendment.
Thank you. We're now open for debate. Does anyone wish to speak? Councillor Orr, please.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to add to that although I represent Ward 1, I do have a lot of family and friends in Armadale, and at present, unfortunately, they do feel unsupported and not included in the decision making that is affecting them. And they have real concerns about the services that are potentially being withdrawn for them. My colleagues have spoken about health and well-being and all of that sort of thing. So I do think we've got an opportunity here just to take a short step back and revisit things and make it a collective and much more universal decision ultimately that needs to be brought back at another time. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Paul, please.
Thanks, Chair. Is this a question of how many
no questions, it's debate. You can make your statement or your comment, but no questions.
I'll just leave it, Chair.
Councillor Conn, please.
Thanks, Chair. This amendment would be commendable, if not the motives. The report has quite clearly said the reasons why officers have come back to the executive because of the proposals presented by Armadale Thistle Football Club, and that is they are not progressing, and that's clearly in the paper. So, but not for the first time we have a motion or an amendment from the SNP that's long on words but waffle. We seem to forget the situation regarding Armadale, Broxburn, Bubbles and Howden Park Centre when that was part of West Lothian Leisure's undertaking on behalf of the council, and that the swimming pools in the Howden Park Centre were financially a burden on West Lothian Leisure, and that's why they handed them back to the council. Mention was made about bubbles. I have to remind the SNP group that Bubbles was demolished due to vandalism and fire damage, not because of the council demolishing something that the community desired to keep. Roxburn was fire damaged and demolished, and there's opportunities to redevelop these sites. Indeed, Bubbles, there was an application in from a house builder with a £3 million offer to buy from the council, which the SNP opposed. So even when things are progressing on a positive basis, the SNP can still dig the negative out of something that's positive. It must be something to do with the N word in their party's title. Regarding the community centre review, my understanding is that the community centre had a consultation themselves, and they decided that a CAT was not a viable project, and that's why they're continuing as a SKIO to manage the community centre. Regarding the pause in community consultation, I find actually bizarre that they want a period of 6 months to have a consultation where the 8-week consultation process could actually be the catalyst to actually start a meaningful discussion with the community. But let's delay, and the building will still be there in its current position. So there's nothing negative coming out of the SNP. Yes, there is. It's a delay. Let's carry forward the statutory 8-week consultation period, and let's see what comes out of that, and then we can progress on that. I really just don't see the benefit to the Armadale community where you have a derelict building, a vacant building sitting there contributing nothing. And when you look at North Street in itself, this could be the catalyst to help bring forward a greater development within North Street, rather than we just continue to do nothing. Referring to all the various good points that they've mentioned about health inequality, etc., the capability in the local communities, that's there as far as the council is concerned. But what is not there is actually the political support from the SNP to actually do something for the Armadale community, except let's delay things. And oh, by the way, there's an election coming up. We'll be the champions of Armadale by saying, let's not do something for your community for 6 months. Absolutely pathetic. Thank you.
Mr. Danny Logue, please. And it's debate. No questions.
Not really ask a question. I've got concerns about the cost of running this facility. If you were using it as a swimming pool, it wasn't used much, and the building wasn't in the greatest of.
Speak to the mic.
The building wasn't the greatest of upgrades. The cost of refurbishment for the building, if you were to use it for something else, would going to be immense. And I've got and I'm waiting something like the Community Wealth Building Action Plan to maybe give you money. It's like waiting in a lottery one. You've probably got a better chance of winning the lottery. The other issues with it is it could be a real big burden on the community if they actually took the asset. I mean, it's like somebody giving you a caravan that's been sitting on a site for about 7 years in a really popular area, and then holiday destination in Scotland, and then finding out that the actual costs of the caravan exceeds its actual worth, and that you have to move it somewhere, and it's going to cost you a fortune. I've been in that position where somebody offered me one, and I never took it. So with the community groups already looking at the community centre and the Armadale Thistle looking at the site, I think I can't see where you're going with this, honestly.
Anyone else? If there's no one else, no, I'll sum up the motion. I've looked at it very carefully. We're being asked to spend money we don't have. If this was to be delayed for 6 months, the building could deteriorate further. It's lying empty, and we don't know the cost. On the basis of what we know, there is no evidence of clear community desire to see it brought back into use. There are alternative swimming facilities locally. it is a fact that it was closed due to very little use and running at a significant loss. I'll reiterate what Councillor Loke has said. You know, if we look to the Community Wealth Building Act, as it may become, and have to bid for money, we still await a decision from Scottish Government Education Secretary to provide the £15 million for St Kitts. We were promised that. The Education Chair and I were present when that was promised by the Cabinet Secretary for Education. We still await, I still await, confirmation of a date to meet with Angela Constance as regards the much promised heralded funding for new health centre at East Calder. It's pie in the sky. I'm sorry, but I view this very much as an election ploy in the run-up to the Scottish parliamentary election. Thank you. You can now go to the vote. Pass to the governance manager. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. The vote will be taken electronically. There are 13 votes to be cast. There is the motion by Councillor Fitzpatrick. That is your yes button. There is the amendment by Councillor Stafford. That is your no button. There is a third button there for abstain. Thank you, Chair. All votes have now been cast. There are 9 votes for the motion, 4 votes for the amendment. The motion is carried.
Thank you very much. We now move on to paper 10. Proposed lease extension to first class nursery, Cookit Lane, Livingston Village. David Baird again, please.
Good afternoon, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek Council Executive approval to extend the lease for the property at 2 Cut Lane by an additional 6 years for the tenant First Class Nursery Limited. The request has been made by the tenant to allow them to sell their business interest and get full value for the goodwill and trading history they have built up. As this also aligns with the Council's interest as a landlord in securing our tenants on longer leases where it meets the needs of both parties, this transaction can be said to meet the Council's best value requirements and the principles of good estate management. As such, Council Executive is asked to approve the recommendations noted in section B of the report, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, David. Are there any questions? Seems pretty straightforward process. Any comments? Doesn't seem to be. We agree with the recommendation. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 11, which is a Scottish Government consultation on proposals to update the School Premises Scotland Regulations of 1967. And that will be dealt with by David Baird. Again, please.
Thanks again, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek Council Executive approval to submit the proposed response to the Scottish Government in relation to its consultation on amending the School Premises Regulations 1967. As members will note in D1 of the report, the regulations provide minimum standards on school buildings and associated elements such as lighting and ventilation. The Government is seeking views on their proposals to update the regulations. The proposed response was considered by officers from across Council services, and answers have been provided for each of the 25 questions asked, as is noted in Appendix 1. Due to reporting deadlines, it was not possible to submit this response to PDSP. It has, however, been circulated to members of the Corporate Policy and Resources PDSP to enable their comments to be added to the response as appropriate. The Council Executive is therefore asked to approve the recommendations noted in section B of the report, and I and officers from Education are happy to take any questions you have.
Thank you very much, David. Do we have any questions? Doesn't seem to be. Do we have any comments? Councillor Patel, please, comments.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. It was just a really brief comment. I was going through it and I realised that, I don't know what Building Bulletin 93 says, and I don't know what Regulation 25 is. So for something like this in the future, I completely understand the full answers that you give to a lot of the consultation questions, but it would have been really helpful for us as elected members to see what the regulations were that they were proposing were updated or left the same. So that was really all for future. But thank you very much.
Thank you. These, of course, were questions posted by the Scottish Government. Do we have any other comments? Doesn't seem to be. Happy to agree the recommendation. Thank you very much. And we now move on to item 12, Whitrick House Replacement Facility. David Baird, please.
Thanks, Chair. The purpose of this report is to provide an update to Council Executive on the investment project to replace the residential care facility for children at care at Whitrick House in East Whitburn. Officers are also seeking consent on the strength of this update to proceed with a different option to provide the necessary care facilities in West Lothian as is detailed in the report. As members will see from section D of the report, it was originally intended to construct a replacement facility for Whitrick House, and this was included in the approved capital investment plan. Officers undertook the necessary design work and site selection process for this project, but unfortunately, once it proceeded to market testing via tender, the returns from the construction industry were considerably more than the available budget. As a result of this, officers from Property and Social Policy sought to examine whether a redesign of the facility would deliver any substantial savings. However, unfortunately, this was not possible. Consequently, officers then examined other means of achieving the aim to provide better facilities for our looked after children. This culminated in the options appraisal noted in section D2 of the report. As the capital investment plan is fully committed, officers are now recommending option 3 should be taken forward from the comprehensive options appraisal completed by officers. This option, to renovate and repurpose existing accommodation within the council's estate, will continue to provide for the needs of our looked after children and will also enable the refurbishment of Torcroft House, which would also have been required and would not have been possible under the original proposals. Officers have costed the proposals noted in option 3 and are confident these can be accommodated within the existing identified budget. Council Executive is therefore asked to approve the recommendations noted in section B of the report, and I and officers from Social Policy are happy to answer the questions you may have.
Thank you very much, David. Are there any questions? Doesn't seem to be any comments. Doesn't seem to be. Happy to agree the recommendations. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 13, West Lothian Local Development Plan, and Kate Hopper will speak to this. Thank you, Kate.
Good afternoon. The purpose of this report is to advise Council Executive the proposed Local Development Plan Scheme 2026. Planning authorities are required to prepare a development plan scheme at least annually. The development plan scheme sets out the programme for preparing, reviewing, consulting on the next local development plan and how the public can get involved. The development plan scheme now sets out a timetable for the preparation of the plan. And in this, it sets out the timetable has slipped by about 9 months from the last time we prepared DPS in March 2025. The evidence report to support the next stage of the plan was approved by the Council in June 2025 and then submitted to GateCheck for approval. Scottish Ministers returned the evidence report to the Council in November 2025 for further work, and the assessment report concluded that the Council was required to procure additional studies and collect further evidence. This included specifically working with NHS Lothian on further healthcare data and auditing. We are required to compile this evidence prior to resubmitting to GateCheck. The timetable now sets out that we expect that the evidence will be returned to full Council in spring of this year, with the proposed plan expected to be presented for approval in November, and then the consultation period on the proposed plan with the public running from December to March 2027. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Kate. Are there any questions? Been a lot of work done on this to date. Councillor Mannion, please.
Thank you, Kate. Yes, I think we can recall the significant amount of evidence in the evidence report that was discussed at the PDSP and the Council. My question, though, is were we the only Council that did not get through the GateCheck?
If you keep your mic live all the time, Kate, you won't have the problem.
Okay.
That's you.
Thanks, Chair. 16 councils to date have submitted evidence reports to GateCheck, and of those, only 4 have passed first time around. The 12 councils did not pass the GateCheck alongside ourselves.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Patel.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks, Kate, for the report and the presentation. Got just a couple of questions. The first one is on, they're in D2, I think all of them. So on page 3, the evidence report was returned, we know this. The need to collate additional evidence and procure a number of supporting studies and strategies. Can you, I know that you have, including a review of West Lothian's landscape and countryside belt designations, but what else was required? Are you able to expand and just let us know what specifically they told us that we needed to do more of?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, there was around 5 or 6 different studies that we needed to do, not least the auditing of all NHS Lothian's premises in order to support a new contributions policy on healthcare. The largest study is reviewing all of West Lothian's landscape designations, looking at existing countryside belts with the potential of designating all of those as green belts moving into the plan. There's also the need to prepare a new open space strategy for West Lothian. That is a cross-council project between planning and operational services, which will be running starting from now over the next year. The other pieces of work included further work on gypsy travellers, which has been returned to this council in terms of an update on that. And we're very glad to see that work is progressing. I think that's the list of the projects that they've asked us to do.
Would it be possible to circulate that list to the members of this committee, just so we've got it in writing, we can refer back?
You can circulate that list.
Yes, I think everyone would like that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so it seems that one of the major sticking points here is coordination with NHS Lothian. Is this something that was anticipated before you put in the evidence report? And are there issues with other councils liaising with their own NHS boards?
Thanks, Chair. Firstly, I'm pleased to update that we now have the evidence from NHS Lothian. That came in yesterday, and we're currently looking at it as part of how we then resubmit this into Scottish Government. It is an issue across all councils in Scotland that this work needed to be completed and has been recognised as something that all health boards need to engage on planning with, which they are all now doing so.
Okay, well, I'm really pleased to hear that the evidence has now been submitted by NHS Lothian. Does that mean then that you are sort of quietly confident that the second time round we will pass the gate check?
There's always a risk in this process. I believe one of the things that has happened since all of the councils that we just talked about having their gate checks returned is there was additional guidance produced by Scottish ministers on gate checks, which has clarified some of the key issues that have been raised by councils in doing this process, is making the process a little bit clearer. There's also the opportunity for us to engage directly with the DPA in advance of submission to ensure that we have got things as well as we can right this time around. So yeah, I'm a little bit more confident going into the second round of this.
Okay, that's lovely, Kate. Thank you very much. I think just my final question, I just want to be reassured that the local government elections of May 2027 have not had any impact on the further delays in this process.
No, we're aiming to have the plan out for consultation prior to the local government elections in May 2027.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you so much.
Any other questions? Doesn't seem to be any comments. Doesn't seem to be happy to accept the recommendation. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Mr. Manuel.
Thank you. I think just to acknowledge the huge amount of work that went into the first submission, and now we're going to have to do it again. I think it is of note only 4 of the 16 that were submitted got through, which kind of indicates there's more of a issue about the clarity that's coming from the Scottish Government about what's expected, as opposed to that which we are submitting. Now it would appear that NHS boards have been dragged to the table in order to support, and that's really good news. I think what we've got to see is some joint planning across the NHS and councils in order to ensure we can provide joint community services whenever we can. And that's always been a struggle. It's not helped by a moratorium on building and planning for primary care buildings from the NHS at the moment, but hopefully that will be lifted at some point. But thanks to all of the staff that have been involved in this process, and we'll all look forward to be engaged and see a positive outcome next time. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. When members wish to speak to comment, press a button even though you're waiting 5 minutes, because you did come in a wee bit just last gasp, so I apologise. Okay. Are we happy to, are there any further comments? Happy to accept the recommendation. Thank you. And can I apologise? At the beginning, I should have asked, does anyone wish to hear either item 14 or 15? Doesn't seem to be, so we'll take them as read. Is that agreed? Thank you. And now we will, we've already agreed that item 17 will be taken in private session.